Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about our top 20 running back rankings and tiers in 2023 fantasy football for PPR leagues. We're going to be breaking down the top 20 running backs in depth, running backs 1 through 12. We're going to be glossing over a little bit because I have talked about them previously in my top 12 running back rankings video from about a week ago, and running backs 13 through 20 in depth. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 20 running back rankings and tiers for the 2023 fantasy football season. We begin with the S tier running backs at number 1 with Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, is the best running back in the NFL. I know a lot of fantasy players were nervous last year to draft McCaffrey because of the injuries, and if you faded Christian McCaffrey last year, you probably felt really bad about it because Christian McCaffrey was dominating defenses 50 Shades of Grey style when he was on the Carolina Panthers as well as on the San Francisco 49ers. McCaffrey has the upside to get 1,000 receiving as well as 1,000 rushing yards in this season. He is in an amazing offense with a head coach in Shanahan who loves to create these complex, complicated run plays that really help out a guy like Christian McCaffrey. I expect McCaffrey to finish as the running back number 1 this year in fantasy football, and I think he is an incredibly safe pick in the first round. At number 2, we have Austin Ekeler of the LA Chargers. Ekeler is another player that could get 1,000 rushing as well as 1,000 receiving yards. The only issue with Ekeler is the fact that the Chargers, I just feel like, don't view him as that workhorse running back like McCaffrey. Like, they don't feel like they need to give him 15 plus carries in any given game. Now, there are going to be games where Ekeler gets that, but that is not going to be the normal. But this guy is far from anything normal, right? His pass catching upside's elite. He can catch more passes than a lot of your team's favorite fucking wide receiver. Austin Ekeler is someone who people are a little bit worried about because the change at offensive coordinator, they think maybe since they got a new old coordinator, Justin Herbert the pervert isn't going to dump the ball off as much to Austin Ekeler. But what I will tell you is when you are in an offense, you're the offensive coordinator, and you have one of the best pass catching running backs in the National Football League, and Austin Ekeler might be the best player on their team besides Justin Herbert, you are going to get him involved. You're going to dump the ball off to him. Justin Herbert loves doing it, and I expect Austin Ekeler to smash yet again in 2023. And this is an offense, just like the Niners, that is going to be scoring a whole lot of points. At number 3, to close out the S tier, we have the rookie Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Some players might be nervous to draft Bijan Robinson because he's a rookie, and he's most likely going in the first round of your draft. And you say, hey, I don't want to draft someone who I've never seen play in the NFL. I think maybe some of what he did at Texas was fugazi. It was a wazi, it was a woozy, it was a fluke. But what I will tell you is that he was drafted into the perfect situation. Now, obviously, are the Atlanta Falcons the best offense in the NFL? Fuck no, they are far from it. But they are an offense under Arthur Smith that wants to run the ball. They ran with Tyler Algier. They made Caleb Huntley have a game last year where he looked like prime Adrian Peterson. So they know how to scheme up some great runs. They want to run the rock. Doesn't matter if they are getting beat down by 20 late in the game. They're going to run. Bijan's going to be given a lot of opportunity. I know he hasn't caught many passes in college, but I think at the NFL level with Desmond Ridder, he's going to be catching passes. I am ecstatic about Bijan. I don't have him ranked as the RB1, but he certainly could finish that high. Moving to the A tier, we begin with Saquon Barkley of the New York Football Giants. Now, obviously, the holdout situation is a little bit scary. As I'm recording today's video, we are in July. If you're watching this in August, my opinion may have changed because as we get closer and closer to the start of the NFL season and when most people are doing their fantasy football drafts, my nervous meter, the pendulum, is going to swing. Right now, I'm like 99.9999% sure that Saquon Barkley is going to be playing week 1 as the starting running back of the Giants. But I will tell you, the deeper we get into August, the more and more nervous I will be if the contract doesn't have the big fucking John Hancock on it. I think Saquon Barkley is still an elite running back. He is the best player on the Giants offense, in my opinion, the best player on the Giants as a whole. As long as he shows up, Saquon's going to smash in fantasy. Brian Daboll really helped him out a ton. He helped this whole offense out a ton last year. I don't think this is a Le'Veon Bell situation. I fully expect Saquon to sign. But again, if we get into late August, I post another running back rankings video, and he's ranked a lot lower. That's probably because he hasn't signed yet, and I'm starting to panic. Moving to running back number 5, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb will definitely bump ahead of Saquon Barkley if Barkley doesn't sign that contract in the middle of August. I genuinely am a humongous fan of Nick Chubb. I think this Cleveland Browns offense is going to do a complete 180 from what they did towards the end of last season. I think Deshaun Watson's going to look a lot better, and Nick Chubb was incredibly good last season, and now he has the added upside of Kareem Hunt being gone and them potentially throwing more passes Nick Chubb's way. Nick Chubb actually caught a bunch of passes in 2019 early on in the season when Kareem Hunt wasn't there, and I think that that's just some added upside you can sprinkle onto Nick Chubb. Again, this guy's a tremendous runner. He can run a bastard over, and he can also catch passes at a pretty solid level. While he hasn't caught a bunch of passes in the NFL, he's not like Derrick Henry, who early on in his career, and basically until last year, had butterfingers. At number 6, we have Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, a lot of people are going to be very nervous to draft Jonathan Taylor because they drafted Jonathan Taylor number 1 overall last year, and Jonathan Taylor bent them over a table without the use of lube, and it sucked, right? I get it. You draft someone number 1 overall, and the Indianapolis Colts offense combusted. It was terrible. Nothing went right. Jonathan Taylor gets hurt. Matt Ryan looks like a senile old man. The offensive line doesn't play as good. They fire Frank Reich. They bring in Jeff fucking Saturday to be their head coach, right? So every single thing that could have went wrong. They enter this season with a brand new head coach in Stitchen, who I think is going to help this offense be very run heavy. Jalen Hurts was the guy for him last year in Philly. Now he has Anthony Richardson. This is going to be a run-heavy offense. This is going to be a team that loves to run the ball, and I think the addition of Anthony Richardson opens the upside for Jonathan Taylor. I know there hasn't been many changes to the offensive line, but I think the offensive line is better than how they performed last season, and I am ecstatic for the upside of Jonathan Taylor. I know some people are scary. They're scared. They were burned by him last season, but I think Jonathan Taylor bounces back in a huge way. You can't just think what happened in 2022 is going to happen in 2023. We've seen how great of a player Jonathan Taylor is. Moving now to the B-tier running backs, beginning with Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, obviously, Josh Jacobs in the same scenario as Saquon Barkley. I also believe Josh Jacobs is going to show up. It's crazy to learn that Josh Jacobs and one of his teammates, I think it was Max Crosby, were actually sitting in front of like the Raiders offices in the car, waiting to get the call to go sign the contract, but that never came. He never got that big deal that he was hoping for. I think Josh Jacobs is going to play on the franchise tag. I think the difference between Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo is very minimal in terms of how this Raiders offense will work. Josh Jacobs is the workhorse running back on this team. I completely swung and missed on Jacobs last year. I thought this was a pure running back by committee. Couldn't have been more wrong. Jacobs took a stranglehold of this offense. He caught a bunch of passes, which is something he hasn't really done in the past. I think the upside is very present for Josh Jacobs, and I even will consider moving him into the A tier the second he signs that deal. The second he actually shows up and we know he's going to be playing week 1. Again, I'm still confident he's going to. Just a little bit nervous. At number 8, we got Rhamondre Stevenson of the Patriots. Now, the Patriots last year were terrible, right? Bottom of the barrel. They didn't trust Mac Jones to throw the ball 12 yards down the field. They had to bring in Bailey Zappi, the Zappinator, before they started uncorking the ball. Obviously, everything goes wrong, but Stevenson is still feasting back there. Stevenson has a huge season. Now, right now, the running back room there, besides Stevenson, is dog shit. They have Ayo Pierre. You want to come out here? Pierre Strong. They have some other running backs that aren't even worth mentioning. But the thing is, they brought in Lenny for a workout, Uncle Leonard Fournette, and if Leonard Fournette ends up signing with this team, then I'm going to have to backpedal on Rhamondre Stevenson. But if they don't bring in Leonard Fournette, then Rhamondre Stevenson is all steam ahead to potentially finish as a top 5 back this season. This Patriots offense, I think, is going to bounce back in a big way under Bill O'Brien getting rid of the stooge Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator. So I'm really excited about Stevenson. But again, again, the potential addition of Leonard Fournette scares me out of ranking him higher. At number 9, we have Tony Pollard, who I moved above Derrick Henry of the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Pollard also didn't get a long-term deal, but I don't think anyone was expecting that. I fully expect the Dallas Cowboys to run this man into the dirt. I fully expect them to give him so many touches, receptions, all that. They still could bring Zeke back, but even with Zeke back, I'm still wheels up for Tony Pollard. He's a fine second-round pick. Definitely would prefer to get him in the third, but I don't think he's going to fall that far in most drafts. This Cowboys offense that is going to be explosive. Tony Pollard has shown us for years that he's better than Zeke, but only towards the end of last season was he given the opportunity to actually be the guy to close out the B tier. I almost said the guy to close out the B tier, Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I know there are going to be people right now that are watching this video and think, Nick, Derrick Henry is too old. Nick, Derrick Henry's yards per carry number has been dipping. Nick, how is Derrick Henry going to do it again? Every year, me included, we just try to do some mental gymnastics into fading Derrick fucking Henry. This beast of a man who can take any defender and stiff arm them back to Azkaban, right? He can send you straight to Middle Earth. And yet, we fade him. We think, oh, he's getting old. The Titans offense, this, that, and the other thing. I think the addition of D-Hop helps Derrick Henry. We already know he's going to get a million carries. We saw last year that he was actually better at catching passes. Don't overthink Derrick Henry. Don't just think he's going to magically fall off. He's getting older, this, that, and the other thing. Don't fade Derrick Henry. We do it every year. We talk ourselves into it. Everyone in the fantasy industry fade Derrick Henry, and then Derrick Henry ends up smashing it out of the park like his name was Barry Bonds. Moving now to the C tier, we have one running back here, and that's Breece Hall of the New York Jumbo Jets. The top 11 at running back is loaded to the gills. Breece Hall could arguably be a B tier player. The second, I feel like he is going to be good to go for week number 1. I feel like he's going to be good to go, but I understand the risk that comes with Breece Hall. This guy was uber efficient last season, top 5 in a bunch of categories that I find very important at the running back position. And he's on a team that went from Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Magic Mike White to Aaron Rodgers. So obviously this offense is going to be better, and Breece Hall is inserted as the lead back. There's still a chance they bring in Dalvin Cook, which scares me a little bit, but what scares me most is that I understand that fantasy football, so many players worry so heavily about the first couple of weeks. So if Breece Hall, early in the season, is on a snap count, he's not getting all the carries that you want, and maybe he doesn't squeeze his way into the end zone, and he ends up busting the first couple of weeks right on your face, you're going to feel a little bit disappointed. And you might be like, Nick, why did I take Breece Hall? Why'd you tout Breece Hall so highly? Breece Hall's a great player, but I want you to understand when you draft him, it might be 2-3 weeks before you get the true Breece Hall that you actually drafted early in fantasy drafts. Again, I don't think that's why you should fade him. I'm just giving a warning. Moving now to the D tier, number 12, before we get to 13 through 20, where the true breakdown begins with all the stats. Number 12, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs is on an offense that, in my opinion, is really underrated. I think the Lions offense is going to be nuclear. Shout out to Oppenheimer. I think this offense is going to be diddling defenses all season long, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a big part of that. The biggest downside to Jahmyr Gibbs is the fact that David Montgomery's there. They gave David Montgomery the bag, and you already know when they're on the goal line, they're knocking on the door, that David Montgomery's going to get the ball, like Jamal Williams. But I think Jahmyr Gibbs is an elite pass catcher. He's incredibly fast, and I think he is going to be getting a bunch of targets every single game, especially early on in the season. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to prove that while he's not going to be seeing a bunch of carries every single game, that you can still make waves just catching a bunch of passes. Think about Alvin Kamara early on in his career. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has that incredible upside. Any play, he gets a dump off 4 yards away from Goff, he could take directly to the crib. I am very excited about this Lions offense, and I'm very excited about Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, I understand why some people don't like him because of David Montgomery. At number 13, we have Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, underdog ADP running back 15 at pick 46.1. He was the RB10 in PPR last season and the RB6 in PPR points per game. He put up 14 games last season with 212 carries, 14.1 per game, number 16, 826 rushing yards, 55.1 per game, number 25. 74 targets, 4.9 per game, number 7. 60 receptions, 4 per game, number 5. 441 receiving yards, 29.4 per game, number 6. And 9 total touchdowns, 14th. I know that in terms of yards per carry, Joe Mixon isn't the most efficient running back, 3.7 true yards per carry, 61st, but his biggest competition in Samaje Perine is now in Mile High with the Denver Broncos, and the running backs behind Mixon aren't necessarily these scary players that are going to take over from Joe Mixon. I fully expect him to be the workhorse running back on the Bengals. Some people say, Nick, he had that one really big game last year. That's what really boosted him up. Sure, but he was still pretty reliable every other game outside of that. I think you are almost trying to be different, thinking that Joe Mixon is just not the guy and that this Bengals offense isn't going to generate so many points that Mixon's going to have the upside to be very good. He's a great pass catcher, should finish top 10 in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, which are uber important in PPR, especially the targets and receiving yards number. He's going to get 13, 14, 15 carries every single game. He ranked 14th in run blocking rating. The offensive line early on in the season was a bit of a disaster. It had to do a lot with the chemistry because a lot of the players were so new, and then once they built that chemistry, the offensive line looked a whole lot better. I am all in on the Cincinnati Bengals being a force to be reckoned with yet again, and I think getting the starting running back on a team like that who utilizes the running back so heavily, especially in the red zone, I'm pretty excited about Joe Mixon this year. Obviously, they have Ja'Marr Chase. They have other guys they could throw to in the red zone, but I still think Joe Mixon is going to end up being a great play this year. Running back 15 seems a little crazy in my opinion. He should definitely be ranked higher, and that's why I got him ranked as the running back 13. Moving to running back 14 to close out the D tier, Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers, current underdog ADP running back 17 at pick 53.7. He was the RB9 in PPR last year and the RB12 in PPR points per game. He had 17 games played in 2022, 213 carries, 12.5 per game, 15th at running back, 1,121 rushing yards, 65.9 per game, number 9, 72 targets, number 8, 59 receptions, number 6, 395 receiving yards, number 10, and 7 total touchdowns, 19th. Unlike Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones is uber efficient. Very efficient in a lot of the metrics that I like to look at. 5 true yards per carry, 7th. 5.6 yards per touch, 12th. 893 yards created, 52.5 per game, number 8. And 80 evaded tackles, number 9. Aaron Jones, I get it. They're going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. The offense might take a step down. Jordan Love could be just slightly worse than what Rodgers was last season. That was not the same Rodgers that we're used to. Maybe he had a slump. He's going to come to the New York Jumbo Jets and light the fucking NFL on fire. That wouldn't be surprising. But what Aaron Rodgers did last year wasn't anything mouth-watering. He definitely had a down year in my opinion, and I think everyone else would agree with that. Especially since he was coming off of 2 seasons where he was the MVP of the NFL. Aaron Jones obviously has competition with A.J. Dillon, but A.J. Dillon's going to take some carries away. He might take away some goal line work, and it'll be frustrating, but he's not going to take the targets away. Aaron Jones is a target monster in this offense. Jordan Love's a young quarterback. I think he's going to love to dump the ball Aaron Jones' way, and I think that Aaron Jones, another guy being slept upon, running back 17, based upon what we've seen his whole entire career, basically, Aaron Jones should be ranked much higher than running back 17. I know Jordan Love is a little bit scary, but Jordan Love's going to be just fine. Don't overreact to Jordan Love being the guy for the Packers because you might end up feeling very gross at the end of the season when you miss on guys like Aaron Jones and Christian Watson. Moving to the F tier, we have running backs 15, 16, and 17. Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers, underdog ADP running back 13 at pick 38.5. But before we can break down Najee Harris and the rest of these running backs down in depth, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. If you don't know what Underdog Fantasy is, it's the best place to play fantasy football best ball this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. You do your 18-round draft. There's no waivers, there's no in-season management, and there is no trading. So at the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scoring players into your lineup for you, and at the end of the year, you could potentially end up winning a boatload of money. Like in their biggest contest ever for fantasy football, Best Ball Mania 4, $25 to enter, 150 max entries, $3 million to first place, $15 million in total prizes. If you don't want to join a big tournament, that's fine as well. They have other cash games like mini leagues, so you and 11 other people for a buy-in as low as $3 can do a draft, and you can do things that way, and you win if you're in first or second place in those. If you want to sign up for Underdog if this sounds interesting to you. Make sure you use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit $100, they give you an additional $125, an additional $25, $50, an additional $50. So back on into things, we got Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Running back 14 in PPR last year, running back 20 in PPR points per game. Now, Najee Harris was playing all of last season basically with an injury. That Liz Frank injury that feels like to me it impacted his play last season. There's also a lot of chatter right now about Jaylen Warren. Everyone's getting down on their knees and sucking Jaylen Warren off. Now, I like the player Jaylen Warren. He's incredibly efficient. But something we have to note about Mike Tomlin is, as of his career as a head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is a team that doesn't use a committee. He does not want to go to committee. He wants a workhorse back. So, even if Najee Harris hasn't played the best, definitely didn't look good last year, even if Jaylen Warren looks like the second coming of Barry Sanders to some fantasy players, we all know deep down that it's most likely what's going to happen is that the Steelers are going to use Najee as the workhorse running back. And again, even if he isn't as efficient, even if he isn't as effective as Jaylen Warren, that's just what Mike Tomlin wants to do. Running back 14 in PPR, 20 in PPR points per game. If you drafted Harris last year, it was bad. It was really bad. And running back 14 doesn't sound that bad, but like if you remember watching the games, it was hard to watch at points with Najee Harris, and I'm not trying to just shit on Najee Harris because I still have him ranked running back 15, but I'm just saying things last year were pretty gross. 17 games played in 2022, 272 carries, 16 per game, number 5, 1,038 rushing yards, 61.1 per game, number 13, 18th in targets with 53, 41 receptions, 15th, 229 receiving yards, 25th, and 10 total touchdowns, 10th. His efficiency was bad. 59th in true yards per carry, 52nd in yards per touch, and 55th in run blocking rating. The offensive line was an unmitigated disaster. It was a sieve. It was like when I talk about this a lot, I make this joke all the time. It's like when Moses parted the Red Sea, the offensive line parted like that. It was getting plowed, ran through every single game. Offensive line should be better in 2023, which also should help out Najee Harris. So again, despite the fact that I love Najee Harris, or the fact not that I love Najee Harris, that I love Jaylen Warren, at the end of the fucking day, we all know what's going to happen. We can galaxy brain ourselves into Jaylen Warren, and I still like him as like a handcuff, right? But I don't think he's really going to take over. People seem to be thinking that way. We all know Mike Tomlin loves the running back. Not running back by committee. He loves the workhorse running back. He loves the one guy getting the shine. We know that's going to be Najee Harris. The Steelers' offense just can't be as abysmal as it was last year. Second year, Kenny Pickett, I think he gets better. I think Najee Harris plays pretty well this season. Again, there's definitely downsides. The fact that he hasn't looked even that great his whole career. It's just the fact is, let's call a spade a spade. He's going to get a shit ton of carries, so he's probably going to finish as a top 15 back. At number 16, we got Kenneth Walker III of the Seattle Seahawks, underdog ADP running back, 16 at pick 52.7. Now, I've been someone all offseason long that has stated how worried they are about Kenneth Walker and how I feel like he's going to be a bust. Now, in early fantasy football mock drafts I was doing, Walker was a first or a second round pick. If you draft Walker in the first or the second round, you are a buffoon. You're an idiot. You cannot draft him that high because even though he has top 5 running back upside, he's a great running back and he's on a great offense in Seattle. And you know Pete Carroll loves to chew gum and fucking run the rock. But we know, except for in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, but they drafted Zach Charbonnet in the second round. Kenneth Walker was a second round NFL draft pick, and so was Zach Charbonnet. Pete Carroll has said this is going to be a competition. So when Rashad Penny got hurt last year and Walker became this hot commodity for fantasy, this guy you needed to have to win, like it was great. But they didn't have a lot of depth behind Walker. Zach Charbonnet is a legitimately great pass catcher. So again, I still like Walker. I'm still fine drafting him in the 4th or the 5th round, but when people are drafting him in the 1st or 2nd round, you are just completely not understanding the risk that is very present in this offense. Running back 18 in PPR last year, 17 in PPR points per game, 15 games played with 11 starts, 228 carries, 15.2 per game, number 11, 1,051 rushing yards, number 11, 34th in targets, 33rd in receptions, 42nd in receiving yards, 9 total touchdowns, 14th. Wasn't very efficient, negative 28.3 expected points added. So what that tells you is you could have kind of had any running back given the opportunity. They probably would have played well for Seattle. 4.1 true yards per carry, 38th, 2.97 yards created per touch, 12th. So again, I think Kenneth Walker is a good running back. I worry about Zach Charbonnet, but I understand that even if Walker loses the pass-catching battle to Charbonnet, which he probably will, Kenneth Walker still has value for fantasy. So again, I don't want to shit on Walker. I just want to make it very clear that if you draft him in the first or second round, you just don't understand the very evident risk that's present. And I still really like Zach Charbonnet late, because if something happened to Kenneth Walker, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, Zach Charbonnet would instantly be a top 10 back in my opinion, because there's really not much depth behind Zach Charbonnet. And then you don't have to worry about Kenneth Walker being there. It would be fantastic. But obviously, we don't root for injuries, and I don't want that to happen. I hope Kenneth Walker plays the whole season. At number 17, to close out the F tier, we got another running back that I'm worried about. I have him ranked much lower than Underdog. Underdog's ADP running back 14, pick 41.6. Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Running back 17 in PPR, 24 in PPR points per game. 17 games played last year with 12 starts. 13th in carries, 8th in rushing yards, 22nd in targets, 22nd in receptions, 15th in receiving yards, and 31st in total touchdowns. 5.7 yards per touch, 10th, 4.6 yards per carry, 24th. Now, the biggest reason as to why a lot of people like Travis Etienne entering into the last season was that he's a great pass catcher. In college at Clemson, he was great. But was that just not really the case? Because when he was given the opportunities to catch passes, he was dropping them, and he's not getting a crazy amount of targets like most people probably thought entering into the NFL, right? If you said Travis Etienne got 45 targets, that would be a shock to many, because they think 60, 70, 80 potential targets per season for Etienne. They bring in Tank Bigsby in the NFL draft out of Auburn. Now, he was not necessarily the greatest running back on earth, right? He wasn't a first-round NFL draft pick like Travis Etienne, but in college, he played with a garbage offensive line in Auburn, and he was still able to put up solid numbers. I think that Travis Etienne could lose his goal line work because he's smaller than Tank Bigsby. The guy's name is Tank Bigsby. Obviously, he was bound to be big. So Tank Bigsby, a thick boy, is going to get opportunities on the goal line. So Travis Etienne might get cucked out of that. He's also, Tank Bigsby, a decent pass catcher. Etienne, not the best pass catcher, as we've stated. He struggled to catch passes last season. This is a Jaguars team that I project to be good. So I'm still fine drafting Travis Etienne sometimes where he's getting drafted, but I want you to understand that there's risk. There's risk with all of these guys. That's why they're in the F tier. Najee Harris, the risk is Jaylen Warren, and the risk is maybe he just sucks. Kenneth Walker, the risk is Zach Charbonnet, and with Travis Etienne, the risk is maybe he's not a great pass catcher, and maybe Bigsby is going to be stealing a bunch of touches on the goal line, and that is going to tank his value. Moving now to the G tier, the G spot, Dameon Pierce of the Houston Texans, underdog ADP running back 22, pick 70.1. If you guys were watching my videos last year, you would know that I am a Dameon Pierce stan. I love Dameon Pierce. I talked him up the second he was drafted to the Texans, and then while his ADP was skyrocketing, going directly to the moon when he went from like an 11th to like a 5th round pick, I was talking him up from when he was going in the 11th round. I loved not Dameon Harris. I love Dameon Pierce and the upside he presents in this Houston Texans offense. The Texans have proved to me in this offseason that they want Dameon Pierce to be the guy. They brought in Devin Singletary, who literally is ass. Devin Singletary was given so much opportunity in Buffalo on an elite offense and wasn't able to do shit with it. Dameon Pierce feasted in a bad Houston Texans offense. Imagine what he's going to do on a mid-Houston Texans offense. That goes from Davis Money Mills to C.J. Stroud. Running back 27 in PPR last year, 21 in PPR points per game. He's the running back 22 off the board at pick 70. 13 games played. He was 13th in carries, 16th in rushing yards. He was 30th in targets, 27th in receptions, 42nd in receiving yards, and 31st in total touchdowns. I expect the touchdowns to go up because the offensive line is going to be better, ranking 63rd last year in run blocking rating, and the offense as a whole is going to be better. Again, if you're worried about Dameon Pierce not being a great pass catcher, they brought in Devin Singletary, who can't catch passes. So Dameon Pierce is still going to be getting the pass-catching opportunity. He's going to get the goal line work. He is the best running back on this team by a wide margin, and the Texans are going to get better. He was first in evaded tackles, 15th in yards created. Dameon Pierce has the juice. He has the pizzazz of a great NFL running back on the Houston Texans. What's weighing him down is the fact that he's on the fucking Houston Texans. If he was on another team that was probably better, people would talk him up. Again, Devin Singletary proves no competition. This Texans offense is going to be better. I don't get why he's ranked at running back 22. I am in love with the upside that Dameon Pierce presents last season. I understand he didn't smash last year like some thought he would, me included, but he got hurt. The offense was worse than I expected. So I think It's hard for the offense to be worse than they were last year. Hard for the offensive line to be as bad as last year. And the competition behind Dameon Pierce isn't much better. So I'm a big fan of Dameon Pierce. And again, I am all aboard the Dameon Pierce hype train. All aboard, choo-choo, the Dameon Pierce Express in 2023. I probably called him Damian Harris a couple of times in there. I apologize. Dameon Pierce, put some respect on his name. I should, because I said his fucking name wrong. At number 19, we got Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings. Underdog ADP running back 19 at pick 60. Running back 51 in PPR last year and 66. Get your kicks. Route 66 in PPR points per game. I'm going to read his numbers off. He didn't start one game last year. They're not good because he didn't fucking start. Dalvin Cook did. He was 56th in carries, 60 in rushing yards, 61st in targets, 61st in receptions, 67th in receiving yards, and 22nd in touchdowns because he's got that nose for the end zone. But in 2021, when Dalvin Cook missed time, Madison stepped in and was bending defenses over. He was playing fantastic. Week 3 against Seattle, 26 carries, 6 receptions on 8 targets, 171 total yards, running back 7 on the week. Week 5 against Detroit, 25 carries, 7 receptions on 7 targets, so he can catch passes. 153 total yards, 1 touchdown, running back 6 on the week. Now I know, Nick, his efficiency numbers are going to go down because he's going to get more carries. He's not going to be as efficient. Sure. But the key word there is get more carries. He's going to get more carries. He's the number 1 running back. Nick, the Minnesota Vikings throw the ball more than they used to. I agree with that. I do definitely agree with that. I talk about that a bunch. It's why we like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, the speedster, right? It's why we like those guys, because they throw the ball more. But they're going to use Alexander Mattison. The running backs behind Mattison are not good. They are not good. They are not on the level of Alexander Mattison. So while people try to continually fade Alexander Mattison, and I get it, when he goes in like the 3rd round of drafts, early 3rd round, it's gross. It is, because there's question marks. But as the later you get in the draft, the more risky you can go. I talk about this a lot. Early on in fantasy drafts, you're wrapping the condom around your team, right? You're keeping it safe. Make sure the fucking team you're drafting, like the girls on birth control, you got a condom on. It's as safe as possible, right? In the later rounds, I'm ripping the condom off. I'm cutting the tip off. I'm going in raw. And I think Alexander Mattison is good enough to finish as a top 12 running back. That's what I'm drafting when I'm drafting a top 20 running back, right? I'm not drafting Dameon Pierce as running back 18, thinking he's going to be running back 15. No, I like him as running back 18 because I think he has top 12 upside. I think Dameon Pierce is good. I think Alexander Mattison is really good. And I think people are just trying to be different in disliking Alexander Mattison. They're not taking into account that the running backs behind him aren't very good. They're not taking into account that Dalvin Cook is fucking gone and that Alexander Mattison is going to see a lot of opportunity. So don't overthink things. A lot of fantasy players overthink a lot. And I have done this in the past. I have overthought situations where things are very clear. Like last year, Saquon Barkley is going in, not in the 1st round. Why was I not drafting a bunch? A.J. Brown was going in the 3rd round. Why was I overthinking fucking A.J. Brown? So I'm trying not to do that anymore. I'm not trying to galaxy brain this world where a guy like A.J. Brown for some reason isn't good in Philly. Why would Alexander Mattison not be good in Minnesota as long as he's just a pretty solid running back, right? There's no reason for them to work someone in ahead of him. And I think he could end up as the workhorse guy. Like they give him maybe 65-70% of the snaps, and he could truly be an elite back in fantasy. The final running back in G tier, running back number 20, Cam Akers of the LA Rams, underdog ADP running back 21, pick 66.2. Now, if you drafted Cam Akers last year, it was a roller coaster ride. You had him early on in the season. He sucked. He requests a trade, and it's bad. It's really bad. Cam Akers is terrible, and you probably cut him. And then at the end of the season, you might have played against him in your fantasy football championship, and he hit you with the 619 Rey Mysterio, because towards the end of the season, he was ripping off big games. And this is on a Rams team that didn't have Stafford, didn't have Cooper Kupp. So while there was trials and tribulations with Cam Akers last season, let's call a spade a spade. He enters the season with Stafford seemingly healthy, with him as the lead back, and with Cooper Kupp healthy. Sounds like an offense that's a little underrated. Now, again, I don't think the Rams are Super Bowl contenders. I don't think we're to see Stafford and Cooper Kupp hoisting the Lombardi again this season, at least, but I think we're going to see a better offense than people expect, and I think Cam Akers is a better running back than people give him the credit for. Again, his stats weren't great. Running back 35 in PPR, 39 in PPR points per game. He played in 15 games last season, only started 9 games. He was 26th in carries, 29th in rushing yards, 61st in targets, 64th in receptions, 55th in receiving yards, 19th in total touchdowns. He was the 15th ranked in dominator rating. Again, the running backs behind Akers don't concern me. I'm just not worried. I had some troubles in ranking Akers and James Conner. I didn't know who I wanted to rank higher. I ultimately went with Akers, but James Conner is right on the edge there. Again, I think Akers is a little bit better of a pass-catching running back than people give him credit for, but I don't see him being like a guy like Saquon who gets a lot of targets like that. But at the end of the day, I think this Rams offense is a bit underrated. I think Akers, what he did towards the end of the last season, is really swinging me towards liking him. He starts off bad again. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow. I didn't buy Cam Akers last year, but I will buy him this year due to his discounted price and the fact that I think the LA Rams are a little bit underrated offensively. There are talks about maybe Stafford getting traded, which would obviously put a straight-up axe into this argument. But, you know, I don't think that's going to happen, but, you know, rumors are rumors. Sometimes they do become true. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. I love all of you guys so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.